the United States and the Soviet Union on a sheet of ice in Lake Placid, New York.
Muller trying to turn. There's the left foot. What a cracking shot. Johnny Muller.
If you see a 9-9, Olga Korbut's won a gold medal. There it is.
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
You're listening to a podcast from Key Moments in Cold War Sports History, an online archive series showcasing the work of expert historians. I'm Vince Hunt and I'll be hosting the series, asking each guest to choose an important document or artefact they think is of great significance in the Cold War sports arena.
This is more than just a game. You're playing against the forces of reaction. So you gotta win!
A famous episode of the novel Don Camillo, The Defeat, offers great insight into the post-war and Cold War politics of Italy, with football an ideological struggle between the Catholic Church and the Communist Party. Well, Fabien Archambault of the University of Limoges is a specialist in Italian political history. How did you get to Don Camillo?
I wanted to study political Italian history. And when I arrived in Italy, the first thing you remark, in comparison with France, for example, is that football is very much more important. And the first thing is why? Why is it so important? And when you begin to study, you realize that it was not spontaneous, this love for football in Italy, and it arrived later than we could think. Football, by example, in England, it becomes a sport in the 19th century, and in Italy, it's later after the Second World War. That in the 50s, in the 60s, that the football became the most important sport. Before it was cycling, the great passion of the Italian. So why is football the most important sport, and why so late? It's after the fascism, the fall of fascism, that the church has decided to make everything possible to develop football in Italy. Because this sport was free. It was not a fascist sport. There were too many communists in cycling, so why not football? And as the church is a very powerful body in Italy, that all the social classes go to church, it's spread in all the territory. After a decade, football was practiced by everyone, and everyone was following football. So Guareschi, the author of this novel, The Defeat, had a vision in 1948 that football became one of the points of fighting between the church and its opponent, the Communist Party, in the 20th century.
I'm not going to make any threats. I only want to say that there is one among you who isn't ready and willing to give his last drop of blood for the game. I kick him so I can never sit down again, all right?
This is fascinating stuff, Fabien. How did it play out?
It was a victory of the Catholics. In this field of football and in other fields in Italy, the first thing was where to play. In 1945, in Italy, there were only 100 football fields in the country. So the first thing was to build fields of football. And as the church was controlling the government with the Christian Democratic Party, they had all the finance to make that. And they had the power, the political power, to avoid the communists that were governing some region in Tuscany, in Emilia, in the center of Italy, essentially, to avoid them to build their own fields. So the first thing was that. The second thing was to have an ideology of football that could be compatible with the Catholic ideology. So they decided, for example, to control also the mass newspaper, so the biggest newspapers in Italy. So in France and in Italy, it's not like in England where sports, it's part of the normal culture, so every newspaper speaks of football, for example. In France and Italy, you have special sports newspaper. In Italy, it's La Gazzetta dello Sport, that was like 1 million copies daily. In 1945, the Vatican take control financially of the Gazzetta dello Sport. Their objective, their aim was that you have to play how the Italians play football, very disciplined. You obey the captain of the team. You are very. It's not for fun. Football. It's to win. This way of playing football is like to be a good Catholic, because what has the Catholic to do in his life? He has to obey the priest and above the Pope. So football, Italian way of playing football, became the metaphor of being a good Catholic. And this explains also how they play football in Italy, because in this contest, this game against the communist team of the village, the problem was not to have to play good. It was to defeat absolutely the adversary, and all the ways, all the means were good to win, even to buy the referee.
Politically, I'm absolutely neutral. I've never mixed up with politics since I came into the world. You can therefore rely upon my absolute impartiality.
So in the defeat of Groretzky, at the end it's the communist one who won the game. And after, Don Camillo go to the church and speak to God and saying, "My Lord, why? Why do you make my team lose against these bastards of communists? I made everything to please you. I had given 1,000 lira to the referee." And the God answers, "My dear, the communists had given the double to the referee, so you know what you have to do now." So this is, yes, materially, ideologically, this was a big stuff for Italian Catholic movement to build this body, this football body, that was a way to give strength to their presence in the society.
So let's just take this back to the relationship with the Cold War. So Don Camillo lost because he didn't bribe the referee enough, and the communists did. But who won the fight, the battle for hearts and minds during the Cold War? Was it the church or was it the communists?
Definitely the church. The church at the end was more prepared. They have centuries of how to manage the young people, because the most important thing is the education. Because if you educate the young people, when they will be adult, they will be on your part. So from the 15th century, from the reform, from the Tridentine reform, after the rise of Protestantism in Europe, they had reflection on how could we attract the young people. It was a normal thing. After the fall of fascism, Pope Pius XII was very preoccupied by the rise of communism in the world and in Italy, because this old Catholic country, why did they vote for the atheists of Moscow? That for them it was, they couldn't understand that. So at the end, the communists were overwhelmed, devastated by this general offensive of the Catholic. At the middle of the 60s, there were 10,000 football fields in Italy. The half was the property of the Catholic Church. So this fact shows that they had won. And also, ideologically, calcio popolare, the people's football that was promoted by the Communist Party, it never succeeded. The real football, Italian football, is the parish football that you play in the teams of the priest. And if football has become the national sport of Italy, it's because of the church that could spread all over the territory and all the social classes that were Catholic.
You've been listening to a podcast from the series Key Moments in Cold War Sports History, a project bringing together experts from around the world and hosted here on the Wilson Centre's online digital archive at digitalarchive.org. These podcasts are part of the project The Global History of Sport in the Cold War, which is sponsored by the National Endowment of the Humanities, directed by Professor Bob Edelman of UC San Diego, Professor Chris Young from the University of Cambridge, and Dr. Christian Ostermann of the Woodrow Wilson Centre, and run in collaboration with the German Historical Institute Moscow, the Jordan Centre for Advanced Russian Studies at New York University, and Pembroke College, University of Cambridge. The presenter is Vince Hunt, and the series is produced by Vince Hunt and Laura Deal.